Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about Toy Story 5. This is a new film in the Toy Story franchise. I've personally been watching the Toy Story film since I was 5 years old. That's just how young I was when that first Toy Story film came out. So I've been following these characters for almost my entire life now. So anytime Pixar announces a new Toy Story film, I always kind of get really excited in some way or another. Even though we are at number five, and though, by the time we get to number five in almost any franchise, some of us get a little tired and stuff like that. But for me personally, I was looking forward to Toy Story 5 just because I've really enjoyed all these films up to this point. Lightyear's kind of the exception. That was more so a spin off anyway. But any film that has Toy Story in the title, I've really enjoyed so far. Um, but in this new film, you guys, we basically follow. We more so follow Jessie, the cowgirl, this time, who is a part of the Toy Story group, and she's experiencing a problem with Bonnie, who we've been following, for about two films now, roughly in the Toy Story franchise. And so this is roughly Bonnie's third film, I would say, now in the Toy Story universe. And so Bonnie's at a point in her life where she wants to make friends. She's kind of been in school for about a year or two now. I think that in the film they said she was about 8 years old, so that would be, what, second grade for most kids. And so she wants to make friends, and she has a hard time kind of socially bonding with people. And so her parents get her a tablet device called a Lilypad. And because a lot of the kids in the school are now playing with tablets, they're not really playing with toys at this point in their life. And basically, Bonnie develops an addiction to this tablet device. She just is kind of on it all the time. She's kind of rude to her parents now. She kind of uses that an excuse for her bonding with somebody when it really is, her actually interacting and doing stuff with that other person. And so over the course of this film, Jessie the cowgirl gets the help of both Buzz Lightyear and Woody, who, if you follow Toy Story 4, is kind of a lost toy intentionally now, but he's kind of called back into action once this tablet is kind of ruining Bonnie's life and putting the toys in a place where they're kind of being put in storage. They're not really being used anymore. And so the toys have to figure out, too, how are they going to stay relevant? How are they going to make sure that Bonnie is making the right choices? She's not just staring at a tablet all day and making really bad choices and pretending to make friends and all this stuff that really could be really harmful for her psychologically in the long run. And so over the course of this film, the toys have to figure out what exactly they can do, what exactly is too much and too little with the tablet, and what kind of balance can Bonnie find in her life where she's still playing with these toys and still being able to live her life while also using the tablet in useful ways and not just making that her life too. And so over the course of this film, these are all questions and answers that we have to try to figure out with the toys over the course of the film. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed Toy Story 5. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I've been following these characters since I was 5 years old. I remember just how huge that first Toy Story film was in '95. And it really was one of those movies where you really almost kind of intentionally have to ignore it to not know what it was. Computers were rising, and computer animation was brand new at the time. There was no other film like it that was completely done in a computer in its animated form. And Tom Hanks was a up and coming actor. He was big from Forrest Gump already by then, and Tim Allen was getting big with Home Improvement, and all these people came together to make it work. And John Lasseter was a growing animation director, so he made it big with animation, and obviously his run with Pixar was really impressive too over the course of the years. And I'm just very happy to report that we do have five Toy Story films now that are all very good, very well done, and each kind of have their own flavor of what they want to bring to this universe that John Lasseter and his creative team started all the way back in 1995. With Andrew Stanton taking directing duties this time. He's been a part of Pixar's forever now too as an animator. I'm just really happy that it's a really good Toy Story film. Maybe not the best one in the series, but just a really good, well-made movie that I have a ton of great things to say about. A couple negatives that I'm going to get to here in a couple minutes, but for the most part, a ton of positive things, just tons of things I really enjoyed about this movie overall. So for my positive of Toy Story 5, first and foremost, this is a very creative and imaginative film. I think I would even go so far as to say it's probably the most imaginative Toy Story film since the first one. It really does have that sense of when a child is playing with these toys and coming up with these scenarios with these toys. They find a way with these watercolor sequences that look like watercolor paintings during these sequences that really do make it look like you're envisioning these fantastical scenarios with these toys. Obviously, they change their costume, or they change their look, or they change their voices. They put them in a scenario where they're like secret agents, or somebody's getting married, or somebody's being the ring bearer in a clever way and stuff like that. So they really do have a clever way of bringing those sequences to life very imaginatively, and it really does feel like you kind of are back being a kid again, imagining these super fantastical scenarios with these toys whenever the film decides to go in that direction. It's just very, very clever how they handle all that. And like I mentioned earlier too, I just love spending time with these characters. Pixar did such a great job with 5 films now of just really making sure that I love spending time with the characters, that they're growing, that they're solving their problems, they're moving on to the next big thing, always trying to figure out how they can evolve as these toys, and what the next phase of what they're going to do for their owner that they have, whether it was Andy, whether it was Bonnie. I just love how these characters are always constantly refiguring out, re-evolving scenarios where they always have to change to match what's going on in their owner's life. And I always think that's a really interesting way to handle these films, with Andy moving to college in Toy Story 3, or, Bonnie going to school in Toy Story 4, and now Bonnie, in a stage of her life where she wants to make more friends now and all that kind of stuff. I like how these characters are constantly refiguring out how to stay relevant, how to stay within the conversation of that owner's life. And I think that's kind of the best way moving forward as to how to handle these Toy Story films. And overall, Jessie is our main character this time around. I thought the direction they took with her was very strong. I can easily see why Andrew Stanton, and his creative team really wanted to focus in on her character this time around, because there really is a lot of stuff that she has to do over the course of this film. There's places of her past that really hit her emotionally, and so that's a really important thing to make her the main character and the main focus of the film. And just the directions they take, the emotion she has to feel, the character she has to bond with in order to meet her end goals. Just a lot of stuff they have to do with this character to really make the film work in its fullest potential. And I think by switching the direction to Jessie, they were able to figure that out very well in the script department. There's something I will get into my negatives here in a little bit, but for the most part, as far as putting Jessie the cowgirl front and center, making her the main character, I think that the film succeeds in that department. It really found a way to make sure that Jessie is having the biggest character arc in the film and has to figure out the most things out of all these characters in this film, specifically how tech is always evolving in our culture, and how toys had to constantly figure out how to stay relevant in the culture and the conversation for people too. There's a group of characters this time around, of an army of Buzzes that didn't quite make it to the toy store, and they have more advanced technology as time progressed. So they're still on store shelves for kids to buy, but now they have more features now. And so we're following basically some abandoned Buzz Lightyears and kind of how they're deciding to go about their life now that they're outside of their toy boxes. And for the most part, I wasn't sure about this at first. I know Pixar kind of announced a while ago that there was going to be an army of Buzzes in Toy Story 5, whether it's D23 or CinemaCon or all that other stuff. After seeing the film, they really started to grow on me. I really liked the direction they took with them. They found a way to make them constantly relevant in the story that was being told. So for being somebody that was kind of a naysayer, like, ooh, are they going to the whole army of Buzz things now? I left the film kind of pretty excited to see them. There was a very fun direction that the film took. And the directions they took with these characters was very interesting and kind of relevant to today with the directions that they take with some of them too. And it was just cool to see a really cool group of characters work their way into a Toy Story film. on top of the group of characters that we already see. The character of Smarty Pants I thought was also very fun here. Conan O'Brien voices this character, and you can definitely tell why they wanted him. He was very funny in the film. He is a potty training device for kids when they're learning how to be potty trained. And how they work his character into the movie I thought was very clever. And how they keep him relevant in the story was also very clever. There's even a scene, too, where he really hasn't had a chance to have, time with a child during playtime and stuff like that. And so they kind of play into the humor of that. And so I thought that was very effective too. So if you're looking for another fun new character to join the Toy Story universe, the character of Smarty Pants I think is going to do that for you. I also like all the film's commentary on tech versus toys. I really do feel like things like tablets and things of that nature really do need to be kept in moderation for kids, because if they're on it for too long, they're not going to know too much about the life outside of tablets. But if you keep it on there for too little, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the kids of today, and how tech savvy they are and stuff like that. So it really is kind of a balancing act of how much is too much, how much is too little, and how can toys stay relevant in the today's culture of tablets for kids. And so all the film's commentary on tech versus toys, whether you're on one side or the other, I thought it had very effective ways of telling that. I also liked all the film's jokes on batteries and chargers, how, toys constantly need batteries. It's kind of their wake-up fuel, the way that, a person might need coffee every day. And then same with chargers. I like how, when it comes to the tablet characters, without their charger at night, by the time they wake up in the morning, they're kind of not very useful, not very effective. When they're at, only 10% battery life, that they really can't do as much as the stuff that they would normally do when they're fully charged and stuff like that. So how the film found jokes on batteries and chargers for me really worked very well. I thought the commentary and all that stuff was very effective here. But for my negatives of Toy Story 5, unfortunately, I think I will say this is probably the weakest of the 5 films that we've gotten so far. Just overall, even though Jessie got a ton of love this time around, I thought the overall direction with some of the characters and the overall direction of the story just didn't feel as strong as it did in those first 4 films, which, to be honest, is a very tall order. Those first 4 films did such a great job with making sure almost every single character had their moment, that it did have a new form of commentary on something, that it really evolved the character of Woody, or evolved the character of Andy, or evolved the character of Bonnie. And though this film accomplished maybe some of those things, I don't feel it's quite as effective as it was those first 4 times around that we got those earlier 4 Toy Story films. So it is kind of a bummer that we now have a Toy Story film where one of them has to be the weakest, and it's kind of too bad it has to be the most recent one. And though I understand, switching the character to Jessie to kind of keep the stories fresh for Toy Story, I do kind of miss the whole Woody and Buzz angle. Every time they're on screen, I had a huge smile on my face, and with them not being the main characters this time around, it was kind of a bummer in that department. So if there is indeed plans for a Toy Story 6, my personal vote would be that we do kind of focus on Woody and Buzz again. Yes, you can keep Jessie relevant. Yes, you can make her the third most important character of your story. But I think this franchise really does belong to Woody and Buzz. They really have been our main focus since the first film. And now that they're not in the main spotlight anymore, I don't know if that's a Toy Story universe I want to quite invest in the way I did in those first 4 films. Maybe it's just a personal preference. But if we do indeed get a Toy Story 6, my vote would be Woody and Buzz become our main characters again. And I would also say, too, this film is better more so about being creative than funny. Yeah, there were a couple of jokes here that really did work very well. But for the most part, I think the film succeeds more so in the creative department than in the humor department. So it's probably our least funniest Toy Story film so far. So that is one category I feel like the film could have done better on, is developing its humor and make it as strong as the character direction and the creative stuff, and moving the franchise along in a good direction. So if we do get a Toy Story 6, once again, I think both the creative side and the humorous side have to be on equal volumes, because this time around it felt like more so the creative stuff was significantly better than the humorous stuff. And then also this time around, we did have a few too many subplots. They have to do the whole Army of Buzz thing, and they have to focus on Jessie's story. Then they got to focus on the stuff Woody and Buzz are up to in the whole film. Then they got to focus on Bonnie and her addiction to the tablets and how her parents are going about it, how she's still trying to make friends and all this other stuff. So after a while, there's just, and this film's only like an hour and 45 minutes, so it has a lot it has to do over the course of that runtime. And I just felt like by the time the film was over with, there was almost too many subplots that it didn't quite know how to balance by the time the film was over with. And overall, too, this is the first Toy Story film also where it felt a little too episodic for my taste, because the first film ended on a good note, the second film ended on a good note, the third film basically added finality to the whole, Andy storyline. We had a perfect little trilogy with that. Toy Story 4 kind of ended the idea of Woody constantly feeling to be a part of the gang. He's kind of this intentional lost toy, the same way Bo Peep is now. And now that we're at Toy Story 5, it just kind of felt like another episode of that franchise. It didn't really feel like there was any finality. Clearly, if we get a Toy Story 6, Bonnie's going to play a role in it somehow. It just felt a little too episodic to me, almost like they made it with the intention that we would get a 6 at some point. So for me personally, if we do get a Toy Story 6, try to add a little more finality to it. It just felt like another episode of streaming that happened to be Toy Story. At least that was the feeling I got out of this movie a little bit. And overall, too, I just thought there was too many background characters in this film. We have so many great Toy Story characters to work with, like Forky and the aliens from the Crane game and a bunch of other stuff. A lot of them really are just kind of background noise characters. They really don't have anything to do in this movie. And so I thought, for being all these characters and all this great roster of characters that we have for the Toy Story universe, some of them do get sidelined a little too much. And so that's really too bad, because if you're a fan of Rex or Mr. Potato Head or any of them, they don't really get a lot to do in this movie, unfortunately. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Toy Story 5 an 8.5 out of 10. There's a ton of things to love about it. I really enjoyed this film overall. Like I said, quite a few negatives along the way, too. It really is not the best Toy Story film. But like I said, it is a tall order to try to make something better than those first 4 films, just because they were so excellently made back when they came out. Still going to highly recommend it if you're a Toy Story film fan in any way. I think you really do need to see this. It really is a great film. Like I said, tame your expectations as far as it's going to be the best one of the franchise. Well, I didn't think it was that good, but it is a really good film. I do highly recommend that you check it out. So if you are a Toy Story fan, be sure to see this film, and I do highly recommend seeing it. It's an 8.5 out of 10 for me.